Alright, so yesterday we stopped our revision with this topic, amendability of fundamental rights. Okay, with amendability of fundamental rights, we were looking at two questions. What are those two questions? Whether constitution can be amended or whether amendment is law. First case law is Shankari Prasad versus Union of India. In that, the court held that constitution can be amended as per article 368 of the constitution. Whether amendment is law, no, amendment is not law because the word is not there in the definition. Same thing was upheld in Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan. They simply upheld the decision of the Shankari Prasad case. Golaknath versus State of Punjab, they overturned the decision and then they said fundamental rights alone can never be amended. But amendment is law as per Article 13 Clause 3. To nullify this judgment, to nullify the Golaknath judgment, they came out with the 24th Amendment Act, the Constitution 24th Amendment Act. And the purpose of this law itself was to make the judgment given in Golaknath case as void. Can the legislature do this? They can definitely do this. And how did they do this? They did it with retrospective effect. So it's as if this judgment was never given. Then to challenge the 24th Amendment Act, in the case of Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, the court came and discussed something known as the basic structure doctrine. They said that we should be allowed to amend fundamental rights, and if we say amendment is not law, it is still a problem. So let's do one thing, amendment is law and the fundamental rights also can be amended as long as the basic structure is not removed. So what is the basic structure? We've come across many of these concepts when we studied this thing. Basic structure, judicial review is one, democracy is one, okay, then federal structure is one, correct, secular nature of our country, that's also one more. So like this, there were multiple things that they discussed for basic structure. You cannot remove it. Now, after this Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, I told you there were more case laws that we've not yet discussed, but we will eventually be discussing. All right. Then comes your your Directive Principles of State Policy, DPSPs, comes under your Part 4 of the Constitution. Which articles? From Article 36 to Article 51. Now, your DPSPs are nothing other than goals to be achieved in our country. Who has power to do anything with it? Only the legislature. It is not rights, it is not duties, it is not freedoms. It is simply goals to be achieved by our country. So how do we achieve these goals? The legislature can take any topic, make it into a law, and then only it will be applied to us. Otherwise, these DPSPs don't apply to you and me. We can't do anything with it, neither can it be enforced against us. Now, what happens if a law is violating fundamental rights? If it's violating fundamental rights, that law will be struck down. But if a law is violating DPSPs, nothing will happen to that law. Because DPSPs are not rights. They're not fundamental rights. Okay? Specifically, you cannot go to a court of law and ask the court, ask the legislature to implement a DPSP. You can't do that. When the legislature wants to do it, they will go ahead and do it. Okay, so that is why we say that it shall not be enforceable in any court of law. They are merely for the governance of the country, and it is the duty of the legislature to make them as laws. Okay. Some DPSPs are equal rights for men and women, equal pay, distribution of material resources to the common good, equal justice and free legal aid, uniform civil code, free and compulsory education, protection of environment, protection of monuments, separation of judiciary from the executive, and promoting international peace. Just some of them. Some of them have been implemented as law, some haven't yet been. For example, Uniform Civil Code has still not been implemented fully. Okay, all right. Fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are, again, Article 51A. It was brought in by an amendment, that is your 42nd Amendment in 1976. These duties are nothing other than duties that the citizens have to follow. Just like how DPSPs have to be implemented through legislation, even fundamental duties have to be implemented through legislation. Otherwise, just by looking at the fundamental duties, it says respect your country, respect your national flag, respect the freedom struggle, protect your monuments, protect the, uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India, uphold the brotherhood of our nation, defend the country when called to do so, etc. These are some of the fundamental duties that are there. Remember, we were asked to stand up for the national anthem in a theatre. Okay, that was passed through an order. They passed an order and then it got implemented across the entire country. So then they would play the national anthem before the movie and then everyone had to stand for it and then it continued. I don't know why, but now nobody seems to be following it anymore. So I need to check on the status of that order, but it was implemented through the order. Okay. Yeah, we'll just look at this topic since we had covered writs yesterday. Can we just quickly go through the 5 types of writs? Habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, and quo warranto. 5 writs are there. Now let's just look at this. Okay, can fundamental duties be enforced by writs? Fundamental duties under Article 51A. It is a duty. They said, right, writs are issued against, okay, what is a writ first of all? It is a remedy. It is issued against whom? Like, it depends on each writ. If it's habeas corpus, detaining authority. If it is mandamus, a corporation, government, person. Quo warranto, against that public authority. Just to give an example. So, say in mandamus, they had a public duty to do something and then they didn't do it. So what are we doing? We are issuing a writ of mandamus against those people. Now, what is a fundamental duty? It's a duty, but it's on us as citizens. Can someone go and get a writ of mandamus to be issued against a person to carry out a fundamental duty? This was what got asked as a question. In which case? In the case of Surya Narayanan versus Union of India. But the court came here and said nothing doing. Fundamental duties cannot be enforced by writs. Okay, because it doesn't work that way. Okay. Again, in AIIMS Students Union versus AIIMS. AIIMS is your medical college in Delhi. So the Students Union versus the thing itself. They said that fundamental duties are not enforceable by the courts of law. They simply provide a duty. Unless it has been implemented through legislation. Like a law is coming and saying do this. Unless something like that is there, you cannot enforce a fundamental duty. So DPSPs and fundamental duties are on the same line. And then in Om Prakash versus State of UP, they said that, okay, we can leave Om Prakash, it's a general statement. They're saying that essentially fundamental duties are only to help, not help, to tell people, see, maintain this at least being a country. Actually, from what I've read, fundamental duties was brought in because many people still think of themselves as belonging to, I'm from the kingdom of Mysore, or I'm from the kingdom of Travancore, I am a Kashmiri. They don't say I'm an Indian, okay, because we weren't actually India per se. Only through, like at the time of independence, through contracts with each other, they came together and formed something known as India. Actually, formed something known as Bharat, but also named as India. So what do you do for that? How do you bring about that unity? This is where they say preserve your culture, your heritage, not getting the right word for it. Protect the image of the country in this thing. Like so many things they come out and say it's for that reason. But can you be punished because you didn't carry out a fundamental duty? The answer is no. So is this part clear? Okay. Then coming down to ordinance. Ordinance we'll go through very quickly. Who can pass an ordinance? President and governor. When can he pass the ordinance? When Parliament is in holiday. What is the validity of an ordinance? Either House of Parliament comes back into session. Okay. What are the limitations of the President's power of ordinance? Exactly. He must consult with his Council of Ministers. What is the limitation for the governor? His respective Council of Ministers for the state and President. So whatever requires the permission of the President first, okay, you cannot bypass that permission and pass it as an ordinance. That's all. Or what got rejected in your state legislative assembly, you cannot pass as an ordinance. That's all. Okay, so this is with respect to ordinances. Then comes your legislative power of union and states. Okay, so here we'll just simply look at it as the two powers, as your territorial power and your subject matter. Territorial means Parliament makes law for the entire country, state makes for its respective states. Subject matter is refer to Schedule 7. List 1, List 2, List 3. What is List 2? State list. List 1, Union list or Centers list. And List 3, Concurrent list. What happens, who gets to make a law if on a subject matter that is not there in any of these three lists? Only Parliament. That is what we call as the residuary power. Okay, so this is with respect to your lists. Then we saw when Parliament has the power to make laws on state list. Name the 5 of them. National interest, emergency, breakdown of constitutional machinery of a state, interest of 2 states, and enforcing international agreement. So these are the 5 situations in which Parliament can make that law. Then we came interpretation of legislative lists we'll do later. Great. Freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse. General provision, trade and commerce is free throughout the territory of India, but subject to 302 to 307. 302 and 303 are powers of the Parliament. Parliament can impose restriction in public interest. They should not discriminate between 2 or more states. They are imposing a rule, it should be for the full country, with the exception of during scarcity of goods. They can give more incentives for some states, lesser incentives for other states. Article 304, state has the power to impose taxes for goods coming into their state. Again, most of these taxes are gone with GST, but it was a power that was there. They can also impose restrictions in public interest, but any restrictions that they are imposing, President must give his approval. Okay. 307 is state monopoly. State can make a monopoly in favor of itself. This has been interpreted through Article 19 as well as power under Article 307. Okay. Next, we are not doing this. Writ jurisdiction we just did, so I'm just jumping forward. What is delegated legislation? Delegated legislation is simply delegating the lawmaking power to some other body. So then you have executive legislation, judicial, municipal legislation, autonomous and colonial legislation. Okay, last topic was how laws are formed in our country. It is introduced as a bill. Political party or member of parliament can introduce. Which house of parliament should it be introduced in? Either one of the houses. Which is the exception to this? Money bills. Which house is money bills introduced in? Lok Sabha. So with the exception of money bills, everything else can be introduced in either house. Then there is a first reading, second reading and a third reading. In the first reading, they are simply deciding whether to discuss this law or not. If they decide to go ahead with it, it will be published in the official gazette. And we saw in that PRS website how the timeline will eventually come. Then they will move on to the second reading, where they can choose to appoint a committee or not. Many laws that we've seen, they've not even bothered appointing a committee. They've just gone ahead and passed the law. But if they have appointed the committee, that committee will give a report. That report, on the basis of that report, they'll do a stage 1 and a stage 2 discussion. Like a general discussion and a clause by clause discussion. Moving on to the third reading, they will now vote, the full Lok Sabha will vote on should we pass this bill or not. If they decide to pass the bill, then it goes to the next house, Rajya Sabha. Same 3 readings will take place, with the exception of the standing committee. Then if Rajya Sabha also passes the law, then it will go to the president for signing. And then the day he signs, from the very next day, it becomes law. Now what happens if Lok Sabha rejects the bill, but Rajya Sabha accepts the bill? Can they be? You were saying something? Oh, no, that's for later. Something else? It's not, law is not passed, but is there something that they can do? They can? Exactly. One house can ask the other house to change, make some amendments. If those amendments are accepted, then they can pass the bill. So it's not a hard and fast rule. It's rejected means it's not fully rejected. The same thing applies for the other house also. Now, in case both houses of parliament have rejected it, then only what you're saying comes, joint sitting of parliament. But that only the president has the power to call. So if he calls for one, both houses of parliament will sit and they will decide whether to pass it or not. But if they decide not to pass it, then it gets rejected. That's all. Okay. Coming to ordinary bills and ordinance replacing bills, both of them are to follow the same normal process. But with respect to constitution amending bills, there are 3 different types of requirements. Some amendments to the constitution only require a simple majority. So 50% and above members present and voting. Some require special majority. 2/3 members present and voting should accept the amendments. But some might require both special majority as well as special majority by all of the legislatures. So that means out of the 32 states, at least 1/2 of them must accept to the amendment of the constitution. Okay. Like I said, smaller amendments can be passed by simple majority or special majority, but something like fundamental rights or structure of the constitution, etc., it might require point B as well as point C. Okay, so 3 types: special majority, simple, special majority, and special majority with all of the states. Has everyone's clear with this, right? And lastly, money bill. Money bill can be introduced only in Lok Sabha, will go to Rajya Sabha, but Rajya Sabha can only give recommendations. They have a time limit, 14 days. If they don't respond within 14 days, it's to be taken as accepted. If they do give recommendations, Lok Sabha can choose to accept it or reject it. There is no compulsion for our Lok Sabha to actually accept recommendations. Then, what else? Yeah, this is with respect to money bill. Money bill is a type of a finance bill. So your finance bill itself is category A and category B. Category A finance bills only are your money bills. They relate to the Consolidated Fund of India. So any expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India, or more specifically falling under Article 110, Clause A to F, then we call that as a category A money bill. And this can be, we saw the powers of money bill. But if it's anything other than this, it's a category B money bill, in which case it it's to be treated like an ordinary bill. It can be introduced in either House of Parliament. Okay. Do you all want to see what and all is written in Article 110 A2F? Because I think yesterday someone asked, no ma'am, if they spend from this, do they have to replace the money back, right? So I told you the answer was no, because one item in this says expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India. Apart from that, there are multiple other options. So it can relate to taxation, it can relate to expenditure, it can relate to borrowings. Multiple things are there in this clause A to F. So whichever category it is, they can go ahead and pass it as a money bill. Generally, budget is always an expenditure. So if it's an expenditure, you don't have to return it back. That comes squarely under Article 110 A to F. Okay. Sorry, anyone has a doubt? And yeah, that's about it. So we're done with Constitution of India revision. Did any of you all have time to go through provisions, or did you all have any doubts? Not yet. Okay.